Welcome all of you to this interface. Today we have with us Professor G.D. Sharma, former Secretary of University Grants Commission, former Director of Consortium of Educational Communication, former Professor of NEPA, and at present he is working as President of Indian Colleges Forum, and we are lucky to have Professor G.D. Sharma here for today's discussion. Welcome you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Nationally, we are discussing about internationalization of Indian education. At the same time, none of the Indian higher education institutions are included among the 200 institutions all over the world. In this scenario, what we have to do to improve the quality of education in India?
First of all, let me thank you for introducing a concept of interface. This is a good forum for talking to the people on important issues. You have raised very important issue with regard to ranking of universities in the world, and many of universities of India doesn't figure in this ranking. Let us take this ranking system little with pinch of salt, because ranking system in all the three Times Higher Education ranking or Shanghai or other true ranking system have been designed with a particular context, and this context is a developed country's context, and the parameters and the indicators they have taken are more relevant to their need. I had published a paper on this problems of ranking system. So one should not take it as seriously as these ranking systems have projected positions of India in the world ranking system, because their model is different, their method of assessment is different, and it is evolved for mostly for set of developed countries institutions in of higher education. When it comes to India, one has to look into the kind of a mission, objectives and purpose for which the higher education system was created. So it has to be seen in its own, rather than just comparing it and feeling it that we are not figuring into this list. Sometimes this list is used for marketing the education by the developed countries. Sometimes this ranking is also used by the people to browbeat the higher education system of developing and developing country, including India. So we should take this ranking system much more critically and not take it as it's given as one of the eminent method of assessing the quality of higher education in the world.
Okay. In this connection, the proposed Higher Education Commission of India can contribute a lot. That is the expectation of the higher education field. What is your opinion about that?
Yeah, I think there was a strong need for setting up a commission for education, because it's long time that things have changed, but we have not deliberated on education as well as higher education. In fact, at the fake end of the 10th plan, there was some discussion with regard to formation of the commission, but somehow it could not take place, and the efforts are going on from 1995 to shift the approach of education, higher education particularly. In 1995, WTO came, and as a result, trade in education concept also came, General Agreement on Trade and Services. As a part of the services, education was also part of it. And liberalization was considered very important factor for change in higher education. At that time, it was very necessary that we should discuss the issues and came out with the new education policy, as well as a commission setting up and inquiring about all the issues. But it didn't happen. In 2000 onwards, you would find that there has been a shift in approach of dealing with higher education. One of the shift has been that once we got a loan from World Bank and IMF, there was a suggestion that we should reduce the expenditure and allocation on higher education. As a result of that, policy was formulated for allowing self-financing courses and self-financing colleges in the country, and that was a major shift. Then around 2005, a Private Universities Act came in some of the places. In fact, first it came in Chhattisgarh before that, but that Chhattisgarh Act was struck down by Supreme Court, and then subsequently many of the states, realizing that owing to the technical flaw, the act has been struck down, they removed those technical flaw and set up a Private Universities Act in respective states. And as a result, you find there has been mushrooming of private universities during the shift came from reducing the allocation of higher education, allowing private people to form the universities, which was not there earlier. But with this concept, there was also self-financing private universities. Although universities are constituted by an act, and as per the Trust Societies, the Companies Act, which is not for profit making. But the new change came, and under the new liberalism, they were allowed to charge the full cost plus price. So there has been a shift in approach, and there has been also shift in dealing with the University Grants Commission. When the Uchitar Shiksha Abhiyan came, at that moment it was necessary that University Grant Commission should have been fully involved in allocating resources to the colleges and universities for their development, but it was separately done. So you find the University Grants Commission working for several years on this subject have been, although consultation took place, but was not responsible for allocating resources. With the University Grants Commission, if allocation of resources it takes in a manner where the discussion, consultation takes place, and then proposals are being made and allowed, but there was taken. So there is a shift again in terms of approach. And the third shift came, they started thinking of higher education, which was very essential for developing country, involving large number of young students who were already seeking the admissions in various courses of studies like engineering, medicine, management, and new courses, pharmacy, architecture, etc., expanding in this sector. But this private universities came as a way to help this expansion. On other side, there has been some change with regard to the approach in terms of regulation. In fact, from earlier approach to promotion and development of higher education, there has been an approach of regulation and controlling. In fact, even earlier 4 or 5 bills were prepared, and that bills were towards regulating the higher education system. But somehow they could not be passed in the parliament, and therefore they were dropped. So issue there is today, though expansion in higher education has taken place, mainly with the support of the private universities in respective states. In almost 24 states have the Private University Act, but central government still doesn't have a Private University Act, which could not be, parliament could not debate and discuss about. That's an issue. Many of the colleges were allowed to the self-financing courses and self-financing, fully self-financing institutions. So expansion has taken place during this period of during 11th plan as well as 12th plan. But 12th plan expansion and 11th plan expansion also included the public sector institutions. On the demand of the respective states, the IITs were open in respective many states, IIMs were open in many states. So you find public sector response has also been there. But one of the affected the system has been the colleges. Colleges have been almost, other than RUSA, you find almost neglected in terms of allocating resources for their development, promotion, and introducing certain new programs of studies, etc. So that is the major change, major shift has come. Earlier liberalization was there. Many universities came as almost state-supported universities, and some earlier private universities which came, which were totally a kind of philanthropic approach, where the fees charged from the students were nominal. But new private universities were based on the full cost plus recovery, and as a result, only those who could afford, they can get it. But those who could not afford, they have to depend on public sector institutions. But public sector institutions being less, they had to struggle, and therefore you find admissions in engineering colleges, admissions in the IITs, etc., became very competitive. And therefore you find many fields, colleges could not really progress as much. Though colleges developed, many of self-financing colleges also come up, but the public sector institutions could not grow as much as private sector institutions have grown. So this has been major shift in approach. Till 9th plan, 10th plan, approach was state coming in big way to support the education of youth, education of people in all the fields of studies. But after 10th plan, under certain circumstances and the pressure from the World Bank and IMF, policy change in practice, not in terms of debate and discussion in the parliament and change of policy. A policy change in practice. There was no debate in parliament whether we should go about it, or there was no policy formulated during this period on this subject. So this has been one of the weakest point. We should have had a commission, as you rightly put it. That commission on education should have been formed almost 10 years back. And new education policy should have been formed again almost 10 years back, but if it did happen, for 2014 onwards, we have been struggling to form the new education policy. There was a discussion at the district level, block level, institution level, and all other places. Then a committee was also constituted for framing the new education policy, TSR Subramanian Committee. And then subsequently, another committee has been formulated where the former Space Institute ISRO director was made the chairman, and they were to submit the report. And announcement was made that soon we will be giving a new education policy, but we are awaiting the same as yet. Policy is very important in order to give direction to the higher education or education system as a whole. I think absence of it is causing a lot of ambiguity and a lot of confusion in the system.
Okay. New private universities are coming. Many self-financing courses have been introduced. Do you feel that this will ensure equity and access to the higher education to the marginalized people? Many people are not afford. Many people cannot afford this.
In fact, one of the affected party in this process has been the marginalized and those who are having low income. Those who have high income, they can go and pay and get even the best choices courses. You have engineering courses within engineering, computer science courses, in architecture, pharmacies, they can choose it. But even if you get the same level of performance and you are marginalized and you are having no resources, you are left out of the courses.
Okay.
Although there is a provision that some loan scheme is to be given, some scholarship is given, but loan scheme also has a repayment process and there is interest on it, maybe at the PLR rate, but there is. So you find that if a study is being conducted, you would find that a large proportion of people coming from low and middle income group have missed the opportunity of higher education. Higher education was an equalizer in the system because anybody who could secure certain marks and merit, they got the admission. Now, if you have the 75% marks in your higher secondary examination, and there are no seats in the public sector institutions because sometimes it runs to 85, 90, 95, but even if you have 75% marks, you can get into the private universities and pursue the course of your choice. And if you do not have, if you have money, you can do it. If you do not have money, you have to find out other sources of revenue. So I think equity and quality also, let me share with you, although private universities have provided opportunity of access to many people, which was not available to them. But at the same time, once the expansion takes place, you require the human resources. You require the teaching resources, those particularly the teachers in this. Their growth and their development has been also little less for last several years, because promotions and development, because colleges were not set up. When colleges not set up, no recruitment was done. In fact, policy was of no recruitment. Policy was ad hoc appointment. And the grooming did not take place. So the professors could not really be groomed. So you have on one side expansion of higher education, on the other side shortage of teachers in various fields of studies to be appointed. And therefore you find you have to do with the available resources. And a new concept of the mobile teacher has been also introduced by some of the people. They come and take one particular course and go away. So that is also necessary for meeting out the immediate needs, but that doesn't take you further in terms of a scholastic approach to the higher education.
Quality wise, quantity wise we have grown a lot.
Yes.
Number of universities increased, number of colleges increased, and students are getting best grades and percentage of marks that they're getting. But the complaint we hear from the industry side is that most of the graduates are not employable. What is your comment on that?
You know, the concept of employability has been there since long. In fact, one of my study which I did it in 1976-78 brought out aspect of the graduate unemployment in India. At that time, about 30% of graduates were remaining unemployed for first 6 months to a year of their completion of higher education, graduation studies. And therefore, you find the employability issue is a two-way. One is the quality of education which they receive. Other is the relevance of education they are being given, which is demanded. And third aspect is the growth in the employment sector, industrial sector, and growth in services sectors, and that really makes it. Because of a large part of the system is a general education oriented, you would find that people are not being prepared for new vocations, new professions, etc. So when they go to such professional vocation, the people say they are not employable because of the fact that such programs are not being available to the students in the colleges and universities. On the other hand, the quality and process of education, in spite of several other things, have somewhere it has increased, but somewhere it has not been increased, and it has been compromised because of the rush, because of a lot of people getting into admissions, and then non-availability of good teachers, non-availability of resources, etc. It doesn't take you the quality. So complaint is partly because of the less in growth of employment sector, means industry, services, agriculture, and all other areas where the processing takes place. They employ graduates, and other is also the quality of education which is being imparted.
Yeah.
So we have to address this issue on both fronts. One is the quality being imparted in higher education. Other is our investment on the industrial, agriculture, services sector has to really go in a big way in order to give opportunity to people to get the employment. This situation for last 5 or 10 years, in fact almost 10 years, and for last 5 it has been very accentuated one, that because first few years many graduates got the job in many international organizations which came as a service provider in terms of the back offices, and though you find many people got the job. But after this point, there is also saturation on that front. So you find our graduates are finding it difficult to get both engineering, even the other general graduates, and there has not been in public sector a real growth in employment of the people. That's another issue which is there. So both are responsible. Lack of development of the industry, services in government sector employment, because technology replacing the people, and Other side, we are not giving job to the people to develop the technology. So there is a gap, and that gap would continue for long. And we have to really work out both on education as well as the investment front for providing jobs to the people, which is essential at every sector. On one side, we have agriculture, biggest agriculture, but we don't have enough of job for agriculture graduates or for those who are engaged in food processing, etc., because there are not many. So that is where there is this gap or a mismatch between the education, employment, and investment has to be dealt with.
Okay. India could not produce many Nobel laureates.
Yeah.
Many other countries are producing many Nobel laureates. What we have to do to increase the number of Nobel Prize winners in India?
Yes, India produced Nobel laureate when India did not have much resources. Yeah. And not many universities. You would find that many figured. And once what happened, when the developed countries started inviting people from developing countries, whether you take it from India, you take it from China, many other countries, and offering them positions in their academic sector. So these very people who were trained in India, who were worked on that, and they became the Nobel laureate. You take the name of Khurana, he was trained here in this. You take any other, Amartya Sen, he was a product of Calcutta, that Presidency College, Calcutta. You take many of the persons who got the name. Then there is also very important difference between Indian system of higher education and the system of higher education being followed in America, which is the highest number of Nobel laureate persons having from that country, followed by UK and many other countries. But there is a big difference between the ecosystem of the universities, environment of university, and the kind of respect they get it from industry, the kind of a respect they get from the public sector, where people take it advantage to go to university and learn. And that respect which universities used to get in their area are not coming forward. We always look towards other people. I think on every developmental issue, if our public sector, industrial sector, private industrial sector start looking at a university, you would find university will produce large number of. There is a kind of a gap between the industrial and public PSUs and the university system. We do talk about industry-university linkage, but in practice, in reality, wherever it is there, you find it makes its name. There is a good relationship between the Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, and the industry. So you find it makes name. It also makes the name in the ranking of universities, etc. So we need to change an environment or ecosystem, which they call in modern language, of universities, where the universities are allowed to grow, allowed to have dissent, allowed to think of a lot of research, etc. And government should always look towards the university, or industry should look towards the university to solve their problems. Okay. And where it happens, you find things change. So a Nobel Prize winner depends on how much you contribute in a new way to the field of knowledge. So let's hope that once the environment changes in terms of having a kind of faith in the university system, in fact, last 10 years or more, somehow faith in the university system has been reduced. There is a deficit. I used to say that there is a trust deficit, and therefore you think of regulation. Yeah. Universities are basically a self-governing system which always works for excellence, which always works for the society, we have to promote this concept, not regulation. Regulation concept is basically a low level of linking, thinking of really organizing a higher education system. Some people may make mistakes, some people may not do the excellent, but many people will do it. Give freedom. Don't think of too much of regulation. Once you think of too much of regulation, people always try to do according to regulation, and they don't do innovative, they don't do new thing. So there is a place for regulation, but there is a over-regulation in terms of in terms of you would think that you have to teach this, you have to do that. I think that let them be and engage them in research.
What's your opinion about the present level of autonomy given to universities, or more autonomy is to be given? What is your opinion?
No, universities would get more autonomy in real sense of the term when those who are providing resources, they stop intervening too much. In fact, there was more autonomy to the university earlier. Once the Single University Act was formed, when the act they decided either political representation should be there in the syndicate senate and or in some other places, you would find it has its own implications. So autonomy really says that by nature, university by definition should be autonomous, and they should be allowed to be autonomous. One of the method of giving autonomy to the university is that you give resources, you ask accountability in terms of outcome. Don't every time ask this is there, you appoint the people this way, you do this way, then autonomy is get. Present way efforts are being made towards giving autonomy to the institutions of management, particularly through the act. But I have a little kind of a reservation with regard to the way things are going on formulated, which have to be sorted out in course of time. That on one side we are talking about autonomy to university board of management deciding everything. On the other side we are not clear how resources would go, how resources would help developing properly the newly formed institutions. Old institutions are already having resources, but newly formed institutions. And then one interesting aspect of it is that director appointment has to be done by the appointment committee, which was not there earlier. In fact, the search committee would constitute, then names would be sent to, 3 names would be sent to the president of the country
Vice Chancellor,
and vice chancellor, the chancellor, and then chancellor out of the 3, so whatever number they'll decide. So PMO was out of it. Appointment committee was out of it. You happen to happen different way. Now a director of IM has to be really appointed by the appointment committee and through PMO. So HRD doesn't get into. So on one side we are trying to give autonomy to through board of management and allowing. On the other side, appointment if it is approved by appointment committee, then appointment committee will be only the committee to decide about if a person has to be removed. So there is a kind of corners in this aspect. I think we need to be sorted out. Best thing would be give autonomy to, there is autonomy, avoid political or other interferences which sometimes indirectly, unconsciously happens, and allow universities to grow, and then let there be more of diversity. Let's not go to for more uniformity, that Calicut University should do the same thing, Kochi should do this. Let the university have their own identity and own way of doing, and let them be diverse. They may excel in different field, different areas. Uniformity is a danger.
What methodology we can use to strengthen the teaching learning activities of campuses?
Yeah, I think one of the best ways that earlier we were depending on basically a single method of delivering lecture in the classroom. We didn't have much of the technology used in the classroom earlier, because technology is helpful in many ways. A basic information can be provided through a technology. Certain question answer aspect can be also given by technology. So visual, people learn through visual, and the visual processes, video script can also be given to the university students. And then over and above, knowledge have to be created. One is that you translate the textbook and tell the student, other is to create the knowledge and give to. So strengthening teaching learning process have to be developing new culture of teaching. New culture of teaching should involve both personal discussion and delivering important lectures, at the same time using the new technology which are available. Video has been available for last several years. Multimedia Research Center, now they are called, earlier they were called EMRC Research Center. They produce video lectures in almost all the subjects by eminent persons. You have a look at it and you can learn. and there are video lectures on processes which takes place, which are not normally seen, which you often see in YouTube, but we had India had already developed that sort of thing. Then for last 5-6 years, these institutions are working on the e-content resources, learning object resources, and now they are going into multimedia in terms of the MOOCs. So CEC and media centers have developed MOOCs on almost all the subjects for undergraduate and postgraduate courses. So this can be very helpful, and the classroom situation should be used for discussing more of research outcome, more of analysis of the what is being taught through the various resources like library resources, technology resources, and other thing, and then interaction should place. It's a more of a interactive classroom has to be there in order to strengthen the and put a portion of analysis, application, and outcome. In fact, unless you do this thing, the change in teaching learning process will not. So now there is need for, if you really introduce the concept of a new teaching, new learning, then there has to be a new culture of learning and new culture of teaching. Students have already started new culture of learning through various sources, internet, WhatsApp, Facebook, etc. Use the similar kind of resources for communicating the knowledge to them. And what we need really for today and future, our students should be given 3 basic skills. One is the communication skills. Yesterday you find that people still find it difficult to ask questions. So communication is one of the important aspects. Another, the future would need the mathematical and computational skills, which are very essential for future, because fourth industrial revolution, things are becoming more and more concrete and specific in terms of the scientific way of doing things. So mathematical thing, understanding, computational thinking, computational becomes important, and much more important is basically applying the knowledge in real life situations. I have been telling, if you really want to strengthen your college teaching learning process, set up a research and innovations club within the college and university. Let people voluntarily come. Conduct research in neighboring region on all aspects, whether it's urban related aspect or agriculture related aspect, sociological related aspect, health aspect, any aspect, and then come out with the data which will be, and analyze the data, which then you will be able to link with your theory in the classroom.
Okay.
Then it would bring about a change in the. Change is a necessary, change is a must.
You mentioned about the MOOC programs, massive open online courses. Many universities are offering MOOC courses, and there is provision for selecting 20% of credit from the MOOC courses.
Yeah.
Then from the part of the teachers, there is an apprehension that it may affect the workload of the teachers. What is your opinion about that?
No, I think this fear often is being expressed. When the autonomy was introduced, people said that it will affect the teachers. When new concept come, it will no. MOOCs are basically a kind of supporting teaching learning resources, which would be available to students. Even the 20% take, they don't take 20% from same subject. They may take it from various different subjects, etc. And teachers would be now, if they get little more time, they would be engaged in creating the MOOCs, because there is a dynamism in it. It is not a static. Once you create it, that's over. No. As classroom situation is dynamic. The same way MOOCs are also dynamic. Every second year you have to change, you have to find out new concept, new ideas which have come up. So this fear should be removed. Only government should also not use this instrument for that 20% to reduce the workload of the teachers and reduce the strength of teachers. That would be a wrong approach, wrong concept. That will kill both the new technology as well as the present way of doing things. So best way, of course, is that a kind of assurance to the teaching community, they are not going to be affected through this process of use of technology in the teaching learning process.
What is your opinion about introduction of outcome-based education?
In fact, we should have initially, once we became independent, one of the things we should have done is that we should have gone for outcome-based learning. What is ultimately, after doing things, what you get out of it? This outcome-based learning has been also being considered in technology, that and which has been in fact framed into also national qualifications framework. The first South Korea started with it. Many countries have started doing it. That national qualification framework believes in what is the outcome of learning. Outcome of learning has 7 parameters. That person has learned the subject, domain knowledge, and is able to communicate both verbally as well as written, whether he can apply that particular knowledge, whether he has developed some critical analytical approach to the issues, whether he can transfer the knowledge to other people, whether he can really create certain new solutions of the problem. So these are outcome of learning by learning a particular subject. And once you focus the education process in this way, your teaching learning process become different. And when the student comes here, you are not assessing where from you learn, how you learn, you are assessing, do you able to do this, are you able to do that, which is required. If you can apply a particular formula, I give you an example of pH and conductivity in the chemistry. So if a chemistry student can do the pH and conductivity of soil after learning pH and conductivity in the classroom, and he carries out a test of the soil and he tells, then he will be able to tell the farmer that this is the quality of your soil, you provide these inputs and the growth, there will be better product. So that is application part of it. We have taught him to do in the classroom, but how it is doing in a practical form. So outcome of learning will expect the person is able to apply it in the field or not. Is he able to communicate? Is he able to negotiate? There are new skills which will be required for the today, and this is should be put into outcome of learning basis.
Okay, thank you very much for valuable deliberations.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much.